Prabu Kandiawan, also venerated as Rahiyang Sreangga, was born during a time of philosophical and political transitions in the ancient Sunda Galuh kingdom. His birth was celebrated with great fanfare in the royal compound near the Simanak River. Palace astrologers recorded unusual celestial events, such as a haloed moon and an alignment of stars, which they believed marked the birth of a soul destined for greatness. These events became part of the lore surrounding his early life, setting a mystical tone to his existence. The name Kandiawan is richly symbolic, derived from Kandi, vessel, and Awan, sky or cloud. It can be interpreted as the celestial vessel, suggesting a soul that would bridge heaven and earth. His alternate honorific, Rahiyang Sreangga, incorporates the spiritual title Rahiyang, a term of deification or sanctification, and Sreangga, which may derive from a word meaning brilliance or sacred aura. Together, they express his identity as a ruler not only of land but of spirit. His early years were shaped by education under the best teachers and monks of the kingdom. He studied sacred texts from Hinduism and Buddhism, learned astronomy, philosophy, agriculture, and statecraft. Despite his aristocratic life, young Kandiawan often preferred the company of ascetics and sages. He spent days in secluded forest hermitages, meditating and studying nature, a sign of the spiritual path that would later define him. His family was of royal lineage, descending from both the Galuh and Sunda dynasties. His father was a regional king allied to the greater Sunda Galuh Federation, and his mother came from a noble priestly caste. This dual heritage gave Kandiawan both political legitimacy and spiritual respect, making him an ideal candidate for leadership in an era that valued both strength and sanctity. The people spoke of supernatural signs during his youth, glowing auras, his uncanny connection to animals, and even visions experienced by village elders. Whether or not these stories are factual, they indicate that Kandiawan's presence deeply moved those around him. He was seen not just as a future king, but as a spiritual light, destined to lead with wisdom beyond the worldly. Kandiawan's family traced its roots to the sacred line of Prabu Kandiawan, the founder of Galuh. This ancestral connection positioned him among the most revered noble lines of West Java. As tensions between regions softened, the need for a unifying figure grew. When his father passed, Kandiawan was not the eldest, but the court unanimously chose him due to his wisdom, charisma, and reputation among both nobility and commoners. Upon his coronation, Kandiawan was declared king not merely of a region, but as a symbolic head of a rebalanced unity between the Galuh and Sunda territories. This unification was as much spiritual as it was political. In his coronation speech, preserved partially in the oral tradition, he spoke of restoring the sacred harmony of the land, sky, and people. One of his first moves as king was to visit all the ancient shrines and sacred groves of the kingdom. He offered blessings, prayed with local elders, and listened to the concerns of villagers. This was unprecedented, a ruler making personal pilgrimages rather than issuing decrees from the palace. His reign was marked by such gestures of humility and spiritual inclusiveness. He reformed the kingdom's administration by establishing mandala, spiritual districts, alongside political provinces. These mandalas were led by ascetics who reported not only on religious matters, but also on the ethical state of governance. Kandiawan believed that kings must govern in harmony with Dharma, and so created checks that blended moral law with state law. Kandiawan also began the construction of a great mandala temple complex in the hills of what is now Garut. This complex was both a spiritual retreat and an academic center, where sages, monks, and ministers gathered to debate ethics, astronomy, and agriculture. It became one of the crown jewels of his reign, a place where power and wisdom coexisted. Kandiawan's reign was remembered as a golden age of spiritual consciousness, environmental care, and philosophical harmony. He issued edicts promoting sustainable agriculture, restricting deforestation, and protecting rivers and sacred groves. He believed that disrupting nature was tantamount to disrupting the soul of the kingdom. His policies are among the earliest recorded examples of proto-environmental governance in Sundanese history. He strengthened the role of Karuhun, ancestral spirits, in state rituals. Ancestral veneration became official state practice under his reign, and he personally conducted rituals during seasonal transitions and celestial events. These ceremonies unified the population and reminded them of their shared lineage and obligations to both earth and sky. Kandiawan introduced reforms in taxation, lifting the burden on peasants while demanding more ethical conduct from regional governors. He is said to have punished several high-ranking officials for corruption, even when they were his kin. His justice system emphasized restorative practices, encouraging confession, forgiveness, and symbolic acts of redemption over mere punishment. He expanded diplomatic relations with other kingdoms of the archipelago, particularly the remnants of Srivijaya and the rising Javanese powers. Kandiawan's letters, written in Sanskrit and Old Sundanese, expressed mutual respect and spiritual solidarity rather than ambitions of conquest. Trade also flourished under his rule, with pepper rice and incense flowing from the interior to the coasts. However, Kandiawan never allowed material wealth to dominate his court. He famously lived in a modest palace near the sacred forest rather than in the capital city. His humility inspired nobles and commoners alike and made him one of the most beloved rulers in the kingdom's memory. His reign laid the foundations for spiritual kingship that future rulers aspired to emulate. The legends surrounding Kandiawan's spiritual power are among the most vibrant in Sundanese oral tradition. It is said that he could summon rain during droughts, speak with animals, and calm wild storms with prayer. His personal Ajan mantra was rumored to allow him to walk across rivers or through flames unburnt. These stories, while fantastical, reflect the deep cultural perception of him as both king and Risi sage. A famous legend tells of Kandiawan halting a landslide with nothing but a wooden staff, invoking the mountain spirits to preserve a village from ruin. Another recounts his confrontation with a rival sorcerer prince, where Kandiawan won not through violence, but through the purity of his tapasya, austerity. These tales elevated him into the realm of mythic sainthood. His sacred heirloom was the Keris Sankala Mangaleneng Jati, a blade said to reveal truth and dispel illusions. It was not only a weapon, but a spiritual compass. Kandiawan used it to make difficult judgments, believing the Keris would vibrate or change hue in the presence of lies or impurity. This Keris later became a symbol of righteous leadership in Sundanese royal iconography. He was also a master of ilmu lempung, the ability to appear in multiple places at once. One tale describes him simultaneously comforting a mourning widow, attending a distant shrine, and overseeing palace rituals on the same night. This ability, though metaphorical to some, underscored his perceived omnipresence in the lives of his people. The blending of spiritual and kingly authority made Kandiawan a prototype of the Raja Resi, a king who ruled as both monarch and sage. His name became invoked in prayers for righteous leadership and protection against calamities. Pilgrimages to places he visited became part of popular devotion, binding his spiritual energy to the landscape itself. As Kandiawan aged, he began to distance himself from administrative affairs and turned further inward toward spiritual reflection. Recognizing the impermanence of power, he summoned his council and announced his intent to abdicate. His decision was not made from weakness or pressure, but from the belief that a king who truly followed Dharma must know when to let go. He declared, "A mountain casts its shadow not for eternity. Even the sun rests behind clouds." He passed the crown to a trusted successor, not necessarily his own child, but someone considered spiritually worthy and administratively competent. His last speech emphasized stewardship of the earth, compassion for the weak, and the pursuit of inner balance. His abdication was not seen as an exit, but a transformation, from ruler to sage, from king to ascetic. After leaving the throne, Kandiawan undertook a great pilgrimage through forests, sacred mountains, and riverbanks. He walked alone, barefoot, carrying only a staff and prayer beads. It is said that wherever he meditated, the land would flourish. Springs would burst from rocks, deer would gather silently, and even predators would lay in peace. During these years, he became known as Rahiyang Sreangga, fully assuming the identity of a sanctified being. Local villagers who encountered him began to call him a Badara Titisan, an incarnation of divine light. Some say he gave secret teachings to humble seekers, and others claim he simply offered silence that healed grief and calmed fear. The path of his pilgrimage eventually formed the basis of what would become sacred geography. Sites in modern Garut, Siamis, and Kuningan are still associated with his presence. His retreat into nature was not a retreat from society, but a transformation of his role, becoming a spiritual guardian of the land he once ruled in name. Kandiawan's death, or rather, his final disappearance, is cloaked in mystery. No tomb was built for him, no state funeral recorded. According to legend, he vanished one morning while meditating beside a mist-covered spring in the Mount Sikurai region. His followers found his staff and prayer beads, but his body was never recovered. It is said he attained moksha, liberation from the cycle of rebirth, and merged with the divine. His spiritual disappearance further cemented his deified status. In the generations that followed, shrines were built on hills he had walked, rivers he had blessed, and groves where he had meditated. Oral histories remember him not just as a historical ruler, but as a guardian spirit whose presence still resonates in nature. Many Sundanese people, even today, whisper his name before entering sacred forests or beginning long journeys. Geographically, his legacy lives on in the form of place names, pilgrimage routes, and folklore. The spring near Mount Sikare is still known as Sreangga, named in his honor. Several Pundan Burundek, ancient terraced altars in Garut and Sumedang, are believed to be built where he once prayed. These locations continue to draw pilgrims, mystics, and local tourists. His principles: harmony with nature, humility and leadership, devotion to truth, and service to the people, continue to be cited by scholars, cultural leaders, and traditional spiritualists. In modern West Java, especially among communities that uphold Karifan local wisdom, Kandiawan is invoked in rituals of governance and community unity. In literature and oral storytelling, Prabu Kandiawan remains a towering figure, a king who ruled not only through power, but through virtue. His journey from prince to sage, from monarch to mystic, offers a timeless archetype for leadership grounded in compassion, vision, and transcendence. He is not merely remembered, he is still felt. In the wind over the highlands, the silence of sacred groves, and the conscience of a people who once called him king.